Welcome to Morning Devotion with Ken Gurley. Devotions designed to inspire you on your daily walk with God. Here's your host, Ken Gurley.
Of the Lord and just see good things happen. Thankful. I'm very, very thankful for each and every one of you here on Morning Devotion. And I'm away, and so little technological challenges here. I noticed my microphone has decided to go in and out. So give me an alert if it goes off again. I'm almost back home. Almost. A few weeks ago, I asked you to help me pray. And I mentioned that I was speaking something like 60 times in a handful of weeks, and it's actually ending up more like 70 times. But I'm very thankful for what's happening in this season. And I've drawn strength from your prayers, for the presence of the Lord, and for some incredible people that I'm running into. Tomorrow night, God willing, I wrap up this intense speaking schedule. I'm here in Milwaukee today. Blessed time with some wonderful people at the Parkway Church. Just a historic, monumental church in our movement. Its leadership, the Peters, a great, great team, and met many of our devotees, book on prayer followers. So Jean, Vicki, thank for your prayers and looking forward, and thanks for your forbearance. But God has been good, and I'm looking forward to coming back home. So you know the drill: like, share, follow, get the word out. Let's see some good things happen. Continue to pray for Ukraine. Continue to pray for that whole situation there. It's a pivotal day in which we live. We need to lift up the name of Jesus. Amen. I believe that with all my heart. Lonnie. Hey, do you remember that Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, beware the Ides of March? 2 years before Caesar's assassination, he had changed the new year from the Ides of March, that is anywhere from March 13 to 15, based on the lunar calendar, to the 1st of January. I guess you can do that as a dictator. I wish somebody would have executive authority to change daylight savings time. Okay, all right, I will not go down that road. You will not draw me down that road. Morning Devotion, Roy, you're not going to get me to go down that road. Subject for another day, maybe. But here we are in the Ides of March country, March 14, directly between March 13 and 15. But I'm not going to say beware the Ides of March. I'm going to say beware the muskrat. And I want to look at some threats to growing churches. Oh, I think you're going to like this today. Trenton, I think you're going to like it. Mike, I believe you're going to see in this something that can happen. And I want to share it with you today. Growing churches. It was a few years ago. The rains, when the spring rains come, or the thaws happen, the rains come. Spread across the Midwest, and the mighty Mississippi threatened to inundate the small town of Winfield, Missouri. Missouri National Guard came out in force. Hundreds of townspeople, volunteers came to help. Thousands upon thousands, sandbags filled, stacked, to create a 4-foot wall, a 4-foot levee to save the town. Hundreds of people worked to build the levee, and then they walked the length of the levee looking for weak spots. But early one morning, just before dawn, the levee was breached, and the waters gushed through the breach. Sirens were sounded, and as the water rushed down the street, townfolk awakened to find water entering into their homes. And for a while, people didn't understand what had happened. But when the engineers arrived at the breach, they discovered the problem. The problem. The problem that caused townspeople to awaken to rushing water. The problem was one lousy muskrat. Now, truth in advertising, I really don't know if this animal swimming along behind me is a beaver or a muskrat. Oh, you animal experts, you can figure that out. But it's muskrat-ish. So the muskrat had burrowed in, looking for a den, looking for food, burrowed in and formed the breach. One of the townsfolk said, it's just so disappointing. I mean, with all the guns in this county, couldn't we have just killed the muskrat? Now, you stop and think about it. Had the muskrat not been around, the town would have been spared. The efforts of many would not have been undermined by one small creature. Doesn't the Bible say, Colleen, Wavette, doesn't the Bible say that it's the little foxes that spoil the vines? That it's the tiny fly that can spoil the expensive apothecary's ointment? I see in this tiny threads, like muskrats, to a local church growing and becoming who we're meant to be. And I want to talk about those today. You see, several years ago, God began to deal with my heart about how to help churches find strength and health to focus on their communities and grow through reaching, teaching, and discipleship, not in fishing in aquariums, but fishing in wide open seas. It's been a long journey for us and gave birth to Motion, and then to the recent iteration called healthychurches.org. It's a new endeavor we're preparing to release very soon. Part of the increase in my speaking schedule the last few weeks has been just this, my role in healthy churches, and how we want to come alongside of a pastor and leadership team to help churches focus on harvest. We've only got little time, folks. We're in the 11th hour. We've got to do what God called us to do. We've got to reach our world with the gospel. It was years ago the Natural Church Development Group surveyed 4,000 growing churches across the world. They discovered that every growing church has 8 qualities. 8 qualities. Now, I sent these to Tessie. She's back home, and I'm on the road, but I sent them to her, so maybe she can post them for you. Empowering leadership, gift-based ministries, passionate spirituality, effective structure systems, an inspiring worship service, holistic, that is healing and healthy small groups. 7 is need-oriented evangelism. They want to reach their community. And then finally, number 8 is loving relationships. People kind of like each other, you know. That's good. I think we should in a church, don't you? Angie, I think that's good. I really do. And if these 8 qualities are within a local church, the NCD group said that there's less than a 1% chance that that church is not growing. The illustration that the NCD uses is a barrel that has 8 slats. 8 slats in a barrel. Water level in the barrel is only determined by the length of the shortest slat. Doesn't matter how tall the other 7 are. Whatever the shortest slat is, that's the capacity for the water level in a barrel. And it's the same thing. Rivers rise no higher than their source. If you hung around churches long enough, you know that if there is a glaring weakness, a big lousy muskrat, that doesn't matter how strong you are in some areas, if there's a glaring weakness, it's not going to grow. That church is not going to be what it should be. You say, well, Brother Gurley, that's not my responsibility. I just sit on the pew. I don't make decisions. You are the church. You are the body of Christ. Yes. And we got to watch out for the muskrats. We don't battle flesh and blood. We battle spirits. We battle mindsets and perspectives. And can I give you 4 muskrats? Here we go. You ready? 4 muskrats you got to watch out for if our church is going to be what it needs to be. First is preconceived notions. Yes. Like Naaman said, he almost lost his miracle because he said, behold, I thought. Sometimes our thinking, our stinking thinking, you see what I did there? Yeah, it rhymes. It gets in the way. Jesus said to his disciples, don't say in 4 months, then cometh the harvest. We get restricted in our thinking. Years ago, I grew intrigued with a religious group called the Shakers. The Shakers were the noisy, worshiping Quakers. They were known for their exuberant worship. They danced in circles. They lost themselves in ecstatic praise. Some say they were the very first people in North America who spoke with other tongues. They didn't know what it was. They separated themselves into their own villages, and the movement that began in the 18th century in Manchester, England, quickly relocated and flourished in New England. Adherents believed in the soon coming of the Lord. They commanded a couple of 100,000 members in the years to follow. That's pretty staggering. The Shakers were industrious, inventive, and even to this day, the utilitarian functional furniture made by the Shakers are still in vogue and demand and command high prices in the United States. But one of their curious practices was celibacy. They didn't marry. The men lived in one area, the women lived in another area, and over time, wouldn't you know it, the movement began to dwindle in numbers. I wonder why. Do you know today, of a movement that had hundreds of thousands of followers, there's only 2 Shakers in the United States? Yes, because it didn't flow from one generation to the next. Its desire to be separate from the world ensured its extinction. We've got to make sure that separation is not isolation. We are salt. We are light. We've got to get out into this world and make a difference. Does this help somebody? I hope it does. The second muskrat we've got to watch out for, if our churches are going to grow, is complacency. Tuberculosis was called the white plague of the 19th century. I believe complacency is the white plague of the 21st century. I was talking to a pastor a while back. He'd been talking to his church family about, we need to grow. We need to reach out to the city. We need to touch our community. And he just sensed a few were not listening. He said, and that's what we want, isn't it? Don't we want our church to grow? Silence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, one of the men said, Pastor, yes, we want the church to grow, but we just don't want any more people here. You could have heard a pin drop. The man went on to say he wanted the church to grow because he knew that's what God wanted. But he wasn't so sure if he wanted the church to grow because he liked it small. Wouldn't it be great, he said, if the church could grow somewhere else, but just not here? Then I'd be happy, and God would be happy too. Now, that vocalization, that sentiment, I don't know if I've ever encountered it so abruptly as that, but it's out there. A complacency that says, as long as my friends are here in this church, as long as I've got my company and my family's here, I want the world to be reached, but I really don't want our church to get any bigger. Complacency. A food's best seasoning is hunger. And if there is no appetite, no food tastes good. And if a church is not hungry to reach its community, then no growth is acceptable. What do you do for complacency? What do you do? I can tell you what one New York pastor did years ago. DeWitt Talmage was the pastor of the original Brooklyn Tabernacle. He was concerned that his church, ever growing, ever prosperous, ever affluent, was getting out of touch with the needs of the 5 boroughs. And so he started taking pilgrimages by night into the depraved areas of the city. He took groups from within his church with him, and in the 1870s, the area just north of the original Madison Square in Midtown Manhattan was what Talmage called Satan's circus. Beneath the elevated railways, dingy by day, depraved by night, Talmage took his flock there. Yeah, they were not there to drink. They were not there to point fingers. They were not there to judge. Talmage took them there to wake them up. This is our city. We can't curse the darkness. We're the salt to this community. These people need our help. There's nothing like seeing the need that will shatter complacency. Woe to those who are at ease in Zion. I want my church to grow. I want neighborhoods saved. I want my family saved. I want people I don't know saved. I want every soul that God knows to be saved in our community to be saved. Don't let the muskrat of complacency threaten that. Here's the third muskrat to watch out for. Oh, this is hard. This is hard for Monday, Pastor. Yeah, it is. Prejudices and biases. Remember what Jesus said, I must needs go through Samaria. Oh, how the Jews hated Samaria. Oh, how they hated it. Prejudice comes in many different forms, and in any form, it's ugly. It can be racial, it can be ethnic. Our church is used as a primary site for the recent elections, and we permit our church to be used for this, and it's a way to be involved in the community. But just before the election, those running for office put up all their signs. I mean, our churchyard will just look like a campaign site. I mean, signs are everywhere. But it was just after the Sunday morning service 2 weeks ago, as the signs were going up, one of the people running for election, he stood there and he watched as our church dismissed. And he made a very interesting observation. He told Pastor Tyler, he said, I've been to every church in this city, every temple, every mosque, but that your church is the only church that actually looks like our community in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity. It warmed our hearts because this gospel is to whosoever will. We need to welcome others in our midst. I'm talking to somebody today, talking from my heart. We need to welcome others. Our job is to make outsiders insiders and to make strangers feel like family. They've got to feel like they belong before they can believe and become who they need to be. Can I get a witness to that, Erica? David, do you believe that? Then this is the fourth and final muskrat you got to watch out for. Pride. Pride. There is no pride more noxious to God than spiritual pride. Yeah. That somehow we're better than other people. Do you remember that parable he told of the Pharisee and the publican praying in the temple? That bothers me because the longer I live for God, it's easier for me to get more Pharisee than publican. And I can lose touch with my roots. You remember how Jesus described the Pharisee who was standing in prayer, basically bragging on himself, using the personal pronoun a lot, even to the point of saying, I'm thankful that I'm not like this publican, this tax collector over here, who himself was praying, but wasn't paying a bit of attention to the Pharisee. Rather, he was beating his chest and saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner, a sinner. Yes. One went home from church that day justified. Only one. And it was not the Pharisee. Beware the muskrat of spiritual pride. It's one of the deadliest, vilest things of all. God knows the proud from afar off, and that's exactly where he keeps them, a long way from him. Thinking that we're somehow better than others, that we're more deserving than others. To this day, it bothers me. A person left to grow in church, and the explanation she gave to her pastor was this. Pastor, I looked around and saw all the new people. There were new people on each side of me, in front and behind me. And I thought, I don't deserve this. I deserve to go to a church where everybody looks like me. These people don't look like me, and I want to be a part of a church that looks like me. And she told her pastor that. And she went out in pursuit of a church filled with people that looked just like her. Why? Who's to say? Who knows the human heart? But the reality of every growing church is it's going to be filled with people in all stages of spiritual development. You're going to have people that are brand new. You're going to have people that get cold in the Lord. You're going to have prodigals and backsliders returning to the Lord. Not everybody's going to look like you if the church is growing. Indeed, if they do, then the church is probably declining. I want a church filled with people at all levels of spiritual development. That could be my prodigal coming back to God someday. That could be. Jeremiah wrote to a dispirited people, and God begins to promise through Jeremiah, I will bring again the captivity of Jacob's tents. I will restore the rural dwellings. I will have mercy on my people's houses. I will let you rebuild. I will bring back your worship. I will multiply you. You shall not be few. I will glorify you. You shall not be small. Promises rest on every apostolic church, that the Lord will add to the church daily such as should be saved, to the extent that we can, to the extent that it involves us. Let's don't let a lousy muskrat damage what God's wanting to do in our church family. I don't want my preconceived notions that, yay, I thought this is the way it was supposed to be. My complacency, my prejudice, my bias, my spiritual pride. I don't want it to get in our way, because growth is on its way. I believe that God is sending a harvest to every apostolic church, that you've not seen your greatest day. Your church has not seen its finest moment. I believe with all of my heart that you, as a child of God, have a great work to do in this last day, and that you're going to be used mightily of God. So don't hold back. Don't withhold your hand from the harvest, and don't let little things get between you and what God is longing to do in your city. Just felt that this morning. Felt like sharing that. I hope it's a blessing to someone. You know the drill. Like, share, follow, get the word out. And I just believe that this is going to be a great week, and we're going to see some amazing things happen. We're going to see lives touched, lives changed, as we get our mind on the harvest that is before us. God bless you. Thank you for being a part of Morning Devotion. You're a special group. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Morning Devotion with Ken Gurley. Join us next time for another inspiring devotion. To support this ministry, please visit firstchurch.com/give.